If you can grab my stuff down there, I'll just stay here. So, can I borrow this? Thank you. Oh, there it is. Got it. All right, call to order for the meeting of August 21st, 2024 of the Board of Finance. I am Mike Anderson, the chairman. I am joined by Dan Smith, vice chair, Gary Anino, what's that? Lou Gingerella, Amy Friend, and Carl Johnston. It is 7:08. And on to public comments. Are there any public comments? Oh, I have Brett Mastriani in the waiting room. I don't see any hands. We're going to move on to agenda item number 3. That's a presentation by Stephanie Mastriani, of the chairwoman of the Board of Education.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. We haven't seen each other since right after budget season, and I just wanted to circle back to give you an update on a few things that I think you would be interested in, and then let you know about a continuing concern that we have. I'm not looking for anyone to take action on anything. You don't even have to have a discussion about it. I just want to sort of start you guys thinking about your thoughts about how to handle some of this stuff.
Steph, before you go on, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, Brett said everything looks great. Can you turn the camera just so it can be, we can see? Oh.
I know. Geez, Louise.
She's not. How do I?
Is that important? Can I just stay over here?
On the way. On the way. Yep, keep going.
Oh.
Okay. A little bit less. I'll do it. Which way did you go to that just now? Let's say hello to Brett.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk to you about is our non-lapsing account. If you remember during budget season, I talked a few times about what that deposit would likely look like this year. And although we don't have the official number because we haven't had an official closeout yet, I could tell you that on July 10th, and you probably saw this from our July report, it was predicted that we would end with about $56,000 that would be deposited into non-lapsing. When we had our end of the year report on Wednesday night, that number has changed and it is now $18,562, which is 0.12%. So obviously it's much less than was projected. The new business manager, when going through end of the year stuff, identified an amount of just over $34,000 that needed to be paid into employee retirement. And so she found it and took care of it. So I'm so glad that that happened. She's really wonderful and I can't wait for you all to meet her and do some work with her. I think you'll be so pleased. But that is why our number changed so drastically. So I just wanted to point that out. The one that actually went in, $18,562. I anticipate that you'll see that number eventually pop up on that non-lapsing report that you get every month. When they do the official closeout, you'll see the deposit, but just in advance, since we sort of know what it is, I thought I would give it to you. Additionally, I think most of you know,
1 second.
oh, sure.
So that's the amount of money that will be going into
So you're not going to see it on that sheet there.
so the balance that's here, the 285, 552, it'll be plus 18,000.
That's correct.
So that's gonna go, okay.
That's correct. So on July 1st, the non-lapsing statute has changed. I think we had conversations about this earlier when it happened, but basically what it does is removes the language that makes the Board of Finance the authority that says whether or not we can continue to have one of these accounts. I'll just show it to you. I don't know if you've seen it. It's the new state statute that went into effect on July 1st. So basically, like if you were to look at sort of a sweeping view, the statute now enables any Board of Education to establish a non-lapsing account. And then they left the same things in place, can deposit up to 2%, has to be for educational purposes, and must be approved by the Board of Education. They just took out that statement that talked about who gave permission and continues to give permission for that account to exist. So in light of that,
So what do we have to do as far as our documentation and MOUs that are in place?
Nothing.
yes,
They're
so that
null
is.
and void.
So that's what I want to talk to you about as well. So we have one. And on July 1st, while I don't think that we have to do anything, what I noted was that boards of education across the state are talking about it and sort of making some sort of official thing, because we do have this document that exists that's been in place since June 16th, 2020. And so we voted at our meeting last week to withdraw ourselves from that MOA, but I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that. Obviously, we should be doing this in transparency. Here's the MOA in case you haven't seen it. I think most people have. But-
This is a memorandum of understanding between whom?
Our two boards that were
Which-
signed in
which two
2020,
boards?
the Board of Education, and the Board of Finance.
And you voted to end that.
We are withdrawing from that because the statute no longer requires, basically that says that you can say that we can't have it anymore with 60 days notice. And because the statute changed, that MOA is no longer necessary for us to continue to have a non-lapsing account. So it sort of doesn't hold water anymore, but it felt weird just to not ever talk about it because
But-
it's in place.
But most memorandums of understanding, both parties need to agree to it.
Right.
Well, we
So-
can't, because the state statute trumps our,
So basically, we're just reading between the lines here. The state stepped in, made our MOU no longer valid. You said therefore, Board of Education doesn't support it either. So we go back to the old model where we challenge during the budget season, and if we think you're overstated and we don't want that much going into a non-lapsing
Exactly.
account, we just suppress the budget.
Exactly.
And I'm not sure that's healthy. I mean, we've been operating very well under this, so I'm a little concerned at the Board of Education's decision to just exit from the MOA.
Sure. I think it's always been our position that we want to, do you want to pass it down?
Sorry.
Um,
Yeah, it had been folded, so I thought it was personal problem.
No, it's okay. I can make you your own copy too. Here, and I don't know, this is just an interpretation of that I just found helpful in terms of how other places were doing it. Gary, I agree with you that this has been incredibly reasonable since the inception of this account in 2020. And I also think that the account has been such a source of conversation, at times contention, right? Like people are saying, why so much and why spend on that? And we've had to have these conversations. And so in my opinion, while the MOA is no longer in place because we work really hard to sort of stick with statute, I think in the spirit of where we've come from 2020 and how we've worked together, and knowing that while the Board of Finance can't say the Board of Education can't have a non-lapsing account, the Board of Finance could do exactly what Gary just said, which is, we don't need to fund that thing for $50,000. You can figure it out with your savings account. And so in the spirit of not taking a step back, I wanted to come talk about it and then continue to make sure that we're talking about this non-lapsing account with you all the time, that you're aware of what we are spending, what our balance is, what's happening with it, what our deposit is, because while you don't necessarily have the oversight to say you can't have that anymore, you're still looking at our finances and making decisions, and it's important for you to understand what we're doing with that money. So I don't think our conversations need to change at all.
Unfortunately, the state is basically stating that we shouldn't be looking at the account period. We should be looking at just a line item of what's being funded for that.
I don't know that that was the spirit in which they did it. I think that there have been some places that were blocked from having one. I think we're
I
we're
can
one of
see
the
the
places where it's
statute, that's all.
working.
You have that statute?
It's coming your way. So whoever made this assessment,
Yeah,
you know,
see it.
Yeah, we'll look the lawyer.
he ends with, and often a town's fiscal authority would not do so since any unexpended monies would otherwise revert back to the town at the end of the fiscal year. This is bad. It's just, this just feels bad.
Well, I think the important thing is it doesn't have to be bad for us in North Stonington.
This statute, which legal counsel's looking at, does it mandate the methodology, or does it say this is a minimum? Or, because I'm still a little, even though it wasn't part of the original memorandum of understanding to create it, I have to say, just to unilaterally just say we're done without first coming here and saying, this is what's going on, how do you think we should approach this?
I apologize for doing it backwards. It was the way our meetings rolled out. And so I said, hey, we've got to talk about this. And I can't really bring a position to the Board of Finance because I don't have the authority to act outside of a board meeting on behalf of the board unless the board supports it. So we talked about it and they said, yeah, it's okay. And so I came here to say, hey, here's what the statute is saying. This was July 1st. Here's the direction we're going.
No, you said we're out.
Yeah.
We
You
are
said we're
out.
out.
By September 1st, you're out.
We, we,
Much different.
I think we were out on August 14th. No, I'm just, so. Yeah, and you should continue to. I think that your involvement in the non-lapsing account, while there have been a lot of questions, I have never found you guys to be not supportive. In fact, I think you've been really supportive, and I think it's okay to have questions. We all have to get comfortable with like being uncomfortable with questions. It's okay for you to say, why are you spending that money? Why did you buy that? Why do you need that? Or why are you not spending that money? Those are questions that we all have to be comfortable with, and you have every right to ask. And we have every obligation to answer, quite frankly. I apologize if you all didn't have a heads up that this statute had changed.
Mm.
It's
Who-
not that the statute changed, it's that you voted as a group to walk out of a memorandum of understanding you had without at least coming here and talking to us about it beforehand.
I
I've never
apologize for
heard
the
of
order in which it
Saying,
happened.
well, we have a memorandum, of understanding, but now we don't.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you don't do unilaterally, in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's just a function of how it could happen because we are groups. So I would come to you and say, what do you think? I don't know what it just is a weird thing. So I apologize if it feels like it was disrespectful or done in a way that was not thoughtful to you. It certainly was not. And it was, by the way, I'm the one who initiated. I put it on the agenda with the Board of Education. I don't want you to think that a Board of Education member sort of jumped up and said like, hey, we have to do this. I'm the one who agended it. I'm the one who led the discussion. So I apologize if it feels
could
bad.
be perceived as anything we don't spend goes into the non-lapsing account and we don't need to talk to them anyway. So why do we even need this MOA? Which, while may be factual, just doesn't feel right in the spirit of cooperation that we took so long to get to.
Sure. Well, I'm hoping that the spirit of cooperation doesn't change at all. It's just a statute change. And by the way, it can't be anything that we don't spend. That stuff hasn't changed. That language didn't change. It's still only up to the 2%. It still is only for educational purposes, and it still is only authorized by the Board of Education.
But
Because technically, if we knew about this was going to happen ahead of time, we could have canceled. Being the mean people that we could have been, we could have gave you 60-day notice, canceled it, taken all the money back to the general fund, and that account would have been zero.
You probably could have. I believe it
Depending
was,
on how the dates, obviously.
I
we
believe it
weren't
was
gonna do
introduced
that.
in October when bills are generally,
Obviously, we weren't going to do that, but it's just,
I wouldn't
I-
think that you would.
I think for where we were operating, where everybody was working at a very good spot, and there's other towns that weren't operating from
Yeah.
a good spot, the state basically said, you know what? Well, we're going to take you down here, we're going to move you up here and everything, and everybody starts equaling out. And,
Yeah.
you know,
So
we
the
just want you to look at the line item.
article that you had printed or somebody had printed was from May. So when exactly did the Board of Education find out about this change?
I think that this has been talked about. I mean, Greg Howard is the one who told me months and months and months ago, hey, this is changing. We pulled it. We've talked about it at our Board of Education meetings.
So
At-
when did you guys
At
find out?
length. Probably the beginning of the year. So this is not a quiet conversation that we've been having. And I'm surprised that you all aren't aware like we are. I mean, the statute directly impacts you. I printed initially, after talking to Greg Howard, that interpretation because I was just a little bit confused about how it happened,
Yeah.
why it happened. And that particular group often interprets statute and I find them easy to read. So that's why I printed it. But it certainly isn't something that's been done quietly. Like I said, these conversations we've been having publicly for quite some time. And my drive for coming here tonight and asking to be on the agenda really was about that collaboration that we engage in and the fact that I don't anticipate devolving. I don't think anything will change. The only thing that could change before is that you guys, I guess, in some world that I don't think we ever got close to could say, we're shutting down your non-lapsing account. And so now you can't say that, but the discussions will remain the same.
True, but because of the change in structure in my mind, it creates more challenging questions at budget creation time. Because I
Sure.
will be personally less likely to just send stuff through if we're not part of that whole non-lapsing transfer. If that's a de facto, then I would rather keep the town's money in the town's pocket. And if there needs to be an appropriation, we appropriate.
And I think that you didn't necessarily have that control over the deposit. You had the control to say you can't have that anymore as a board. So what I think is important is that we continue to have the conversations about the non-lapsing. I think you already had your eye on that bottom line number, right? Like, what is this number? What does this look like? And so part of the reason why I handed out the non-lapsing report tonight is because I want to talk about what we've been purchasing, what some of the struggles are that we have with deciding what to purchase. And I want to continue to have the non-lapsing conversations with you. I think it's important. And I think it's in the spirit of, sort of the progress that we're making together.
I would like to suggest one thing about this. Because I think for most people, they'd have actually no idea what a non-lapsing account is.
Yeah.
And I think from now on, you should just simply refer to it as an unallocated reserve. So that the people that are looking at your budget, when you're talking about things, know that you've got this money set aside to do things, that you've got authority to spend. You've got your own account, about $300,000 now. And I wouldn't call it non-lapsing.
That's what the state calls it.
I think we named
The
it what they
state
named
statute
it.
is-
It doesn't obligate us to publicly talk about it as something else. We can say the non-lapsing account. What we're really talking about here is the reserve, unallocated reserve, funds set aside by the school department to spend as they want.
I-
That's what it is.
It is, but I think you're going to cause more confusion if you say it's this, but you're actually meaning it this. I think you're going to cause more issue. If you just call it the RISA account, because that is the state name, that is what it is.
If you asked 1,000 people in North Stonington what non-lapsing account means, I'll bet 2 of them might know. They would be on the Board of Education.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be calling it something that's not.
But that's what it is.
It is,
And to a degree, I'm sitting here saying, what a great way to create something that people won't know what it means. Call
what,
it something that
what is-
nobody can understand.
Michael, what is the line item in the budget for that account?
There's none.
It's on the Board of Education budget. When they present to us, there is a line item in their budget for that.
I
Has
don't
to-
think there is. We talk about it with our budget presentation.
It has,
I got Winona wants to check in, so I'm gonna see if I can get her in.
Hi, Mike. So I was on the phone before I could get into Zoom, so I've been here the whole time, if that's meaningful to anyone. Would the two boards be agreeable to maybe renegotiating a new MOI that's in line with the statute being in place, but still lays out guidelines that's expected between the two parties? Instead of just scrapping the one that we have altogether, could it be modified to accommodate what the world we live in now?
I wouldn't want to speak for the Board of Education without speaking with the Board of Education. I think we have a tri-board meeting coming up on September 9th. And if there was some concern about what was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and some remedies that would make everyone feel comfortable, it certainly would be an appropriate place to discuss it. And then we could each go back to our respective meetings and sort of hash it out there. But I don't think the door is closed on discussion. At the end of the day, we all have to feel comfortable with what the other board is doing, and you are always going to have to approve our budget and push it forward or send it back. And so we just have to be speaking the same language. And in my mind, all this was a statute change. It doesn't, in terms of our process, it really doesn't change anything that's been happening.
I just, in my reading of the statute as it is right now, it allows you rather than the Board of Finance or a Board of Selectmen, if there's no Board of Finance, allows you guys to create this account. And it allows you guys to put money in directly from your finances versus getting it back. I don't know how it's supposed to work right now, whether or not your excess comes back to the town and the town and you say, this is what should go back into our RISA account. But from what I'm reading is it allows you to deposit that money directly from your funds at the end of the year. And I'm not sure if that's how you guys do it now already.
I think the only change, if I'm looking at where that language is in parentheses, the only change is about how the account is established. It simply removes, it doesn't add any language. It simply removes that part about Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen if they're the financial body for the town.
Well, it takes out the Board of Finance or the Board of Selectmen as part of saying the Board of Education may deposit. Before it was the Board of Finance or the Board of Selectmen may deposit. And just coming from whatever the
I could just,
go ahead. Dan.
as I just read this, it said allows. It doesn't say mandate. It allows the school board to do this.
Of course, yeah. It didn't mandate before that you had to allow it either.
Right. So it doesn't mean you have to do it.
No,
So it didn't mean you had to give up on the MOU you had with the finance board.
Sure.
So-
Our concern is that that MOA at the end, the only non-statutory language in that MOA, if you look through, is on that second page, where it says that given 60 days notice,
Number three.
you all can say that we can no longer have that account. And that statute, the way that I read it and the way that other boards of education across the state are reading that, says that you no longer have the authority to say we can or cannot have it.
But I
I'm-
think you're missing a big point.
Okay.
It allows you to do that. It
Yes.
doesn't say you have to. So the Board of
already have it.
Education could have decided, we'll continue to operate. As I just read this quickly, I just saw this. That you could have continued to operate under the memorandum of understanding that we had, regardless of this law. This allows you to do something, but it doesn't say you need to or have to. You could have run this lapsing account just the way the memorandum of understanding calls for.
So basically, I had the memorandum up, and basically everything stays the same except for page 2, section 3, which basically says with 60 days notice, the Board of Finance can terminate the agreement. And we just have to let the Board of Ed know. That's the Board of Finance lets the Board of Ed know that we're terminating the agreement. That's it. That's basically what the state of Connecticut said. You cannot tell them yay or nay, but once they have it, you can't terminate it because of just cause or whatever. We just say they go out and they, we're just spending it however we want. We're buying tractors. We're buying all this. We have a fleet of tractors out there. And we're like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. And they're like, well, we want a fleet of tractors and everything. Well, we can't say, you know what, you're spending irresponsibly. We're terminating the agreement. We can't do that now.
I think we need to review this and then discuss at a later date.
I was just about to say that, Gary. I think, we're just getting this now and,
There's nothing,
and I understand where you guys are coming from. And I completely agree that this statute now takes it out of our hands or if there's no Board of Finance, it's Board of Selectmen from having the authority to say yes or no. You guys are allowed to do it and you're allowed to take it up. Whether or not it takes away the authority from the oversight committee to say at some point we're taking everything out of there and you're free to establish this again next year under the statute. I don't know that yet. So we still need to dive into this and just be comfortable with it.
And you certainly can. And when we made the memorandum of agreement, if you recall, we had both your attorneys and our attorneys sitting down and discussing it. And if it requires that because of the statute change, then we should do that. My sort of drive here tonight was to come in to talk to you about the statute change in case you all hadn't talked about it and to talk about how my board wanted to handle it. And to just start the discussion. I mean, this is, again, I don't think that it has to mean that we're taking any steps backwards. There was a change in the law. And the way that we read that is that we no longer need that in place because we don't need permission to have it. Now, if that feels really badly to you, and I apologize again for not understanding that that could feel badly to you, and perhaps the way I've brought it to you feels badly. And again, like I so apologize for that. That would never be my goal. Then we can continue to talk about it. If you want to consult our attorneys about it, we can do that. Perhaps they have some suggestions about more comfortable language. But I think you all still have the same remedies that Gary sort of alluded to at the beginning of this conversation, which is the ultimate oversight of the budget.
so,
And so if you were to ever feel as though we were using this in a way that was inappropriate or asking for things that were inappropriate or stockpiling money in that account that wasn't being spent and not talking about what the plan was for that money. And I think that the remedy really remains the same.
I think for us as a board, obviously, they have the account. They have the account. We obviously, per state statute, we can't get rid of the account anymore. It's us as a board. Do we want to have the same oversight that we have been doing? Or do we just want to say, Board of Ed, It's your account now. You run it as you wish and everything, and we just handle it that way.
Gary's point, and I think let's just let it lie until and I think we should talk about it as a tri-board once, in September, we have that tri-board meeting and, I think this is a good thing for schools as, being able, boards of education to be able to establish these for all the reasons why we said this in the first place. So just leave it at that. And, we're continuing in our goodwill between each other and we'll, if we have issues with it afterwards and we think that there's a different interpretation, then we'll deal with it. But
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
let's move it on.
You've been really great at figuring things out so far, I think, as
Let's
as
just move
board.
on to, you got some enrollment projections for us?
I do. I want to talk about just briefly about projected enrollment. I know that there was a conversation about it. I think it was your last meeting or maybe 2 meetings ago. So I just wanted to bring some numbers to you, and then I wanted to talk to you about tuition numbers for the year, since the school year is starting next week. So our total enrollment as of today, and that number is like, can be plus or minus depending on what happens over the next couple of weeks. We're at 735. So it's not really a significant change from when I sent you that sheet several months ago, sort of about projected enrollment. It sort of looks the same. And
Is that just kids from town or does that include tuition? So
that's
so it would be-
total.
It would be really important in my mind to understand how many kids from our town and how many kids from out of town.
Yeah, and I have that separated out here.
As we go through this.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to, not create an us and them approach, but we need to understand what is it going to cost to educate the kids in our town before we worry about additive.
So I have a little chart here that I can forward to you. Troy just made it for me really briefly and keep saying, look, this could change. So I want to make sure I keep saying that to you. This could change. But I'm happy to share it with you, not only the chart, but of course the information in it. In terms of who's going where, last year we talked about not only the kids coming in, but our kids going out. So as you know, we can go to VOAG schools, tech schools, or magnet schools. So this year, we have 9 kids attending a magnet school. And that is approximately $50,000 in tuition that we pay for 9. It's $5,588 per student. We don't transport those kids. VOAG, we have 3 going to VOAG. Total tuition at $20,469. That's $6,823 per student. And then we have 20 kids going to tech schools, 14 to Grasso, 6 to Norwich. We don't pay tuition to those schools, but we do have an agreement that we will transport those kids any day that we have school. Do you have questions about our outgoing kids? Okay. So in terms of incoming students, this year, we will have a total, as of today, of 28 kids tuitioning into our school. We have 4 in the senior class of 2025. All 4 of those, by the way, are from Voluntown. We have 10 in the class of 2026. 8 from Preston, 2 from Voluntown. 4 in the class of 2027. 2 from Preston, 2 from Voluntown. And in this freshman class that's starting, we have 10, 3 from Preston, 7 from Voluntown. And then we have that slight, it's like about a $500 tuition bump every year on that schedule that we set. So this year, the tuition that the incoming students are paying is $12,674 a student.
How much per? That's for all of them? Each of them?
Is for each of them that are requiring regular education services.
12,000 what?
$674. And I'm happy to forward this chart to Mike. And then he can get it to you guys. It was super helpful for me, and it was very similar to the one that I shared with you as we were talking about budget, about what our picture last year looked like. I think it's good for us all to sort of know that stuff.
Hey, Steph,
Steph,
go ahead, go ahead.
The
Go ahead.
total will be close to 354,000.
$354,872 is the,
Do you know how many
calculation.
special ed students coming yet?
I don't think that we would know that now, or at least
None
it's
of
not
them-
information that I would have
None
now.
of them now are special.
I would be hesitant to make that sort of connection. It's not information that I have now. This is the information that I have.
Steph, I got a question for you.
Sure.
When you enter, when you have students come in from other towns,
Mhm.
do you enter an agreement per year, or is it like for 3 years, it's going to be this contracted rate for each student?
We sent out 2 years ago a chart that showed what the next 4 years would look like with the increases there.
Okay,
So they're built in,
It's
and
built
the
in.
sending schools are aware of what that is. When they sign that agreement that says that we're a school of choice for their town, they're aware of what those costs are.
so it's just like a union chart. Basically, on this year, you're going to have to send the child for this amount.
Correct.
Next year, it's going to be this amount, and then the following year. So every
Right.
3 or 4 years, you're going to send out saying, hey, this is the next block of
Yeah.
how much you have to pay. So it's every 3, 4 years or something.
Probably next year we'd be looking at redoing that chart.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So the 28 students that are coming in, 12,674 per student. If one of them were to need additional services, is that something we absorb in that 12,000, or we charge back the town?
We charge the town. So in that chart, I don't know that I have it with me tonight. It's an old chart. I think you guys have all seen it at some point.
Yeah, I just
But the
wanted,
chart has laid out, if you were to come in as a special education student, there's a dollar amount that's different than that 12,000. And then there's an asterisk that says you pay above that any costs that are incurred above that.
for that.
So we don't absorb any of that. The sending town does.
Good, okay.
The same as we have a rate for the alternative ed program. So if you as a town want to send a child to our alternative ed program and we accept that child, there's a rate for that as well. Any other questions about the children coming in or about our current enrollment? And Gary, I know that you were the one that had most of the questions about enrollment. And so if there's other info that you want, I want to make sure that I can get it.
And I don't think I was alone. I think Winona had a lot of questions on that also, because I'm just trying to understand. And I need to wrap my mind around how do we come up with 12,674? It should be based on actual cost per student. And it should be a straight pass through. So you develop your budget for your 735 kids, less the 28 of tuition paying kids, plus the magnet of VOAG and tech school. That's our budget. And you divide it by the total number of students.
And that's how much it costs to educate a student in North
And
Stonington.
And that should be applied, that should be the tuition. Shouldn't be much variation. I just never saw it tick and tie back.
And I don't think that we ever got to the point that you were happy with the way that per student tuition was being
Right.
calculated. So let me try and ask now.
I've been in town for 13 years, and that question has always been a floating target somewhere where what is the true cost to educate a child?
And the state has a number too, and that number never looks
It
like
never looks the same.
our number.
But
Um,
now I
so I
have my
think that
friend
that's-
Lou, who's gonna dig right in on this.
Which well, I mean, I think
should
he's,
all be speaking
I'd
the
like to
same
hear his,
language.
he says your, your math does not work. And part of it, just off the bat, is when the Board of Education started this, because we now have facilities and we had other towns interested in sending students to our school where we had room for them and now are creating revenue. We had to have an incentive for them to change their whole policy
Mhm.
find the busing for small amounts of kids to send their kids to this school versus NFA or Griswold or wherever. And we set our tuition competitively to attract those kids. So it's not an apples to apples
Yeah,
type
but we-
situation.
So we had a brand new school and we were an attractive asset, but it's time to true it up a little bit. Let's tick and tie.
They have. I think they've increased it now that they've seen the value of the product.
That's what I want to see. $500 sounds somewhat arbitrary.
I think that our chart was constructed after looking at what our competitors' charts look like. So for example, when we are a school of choice for Preston and Voluntown, I believe that the two of the other choices are NFA and Griswold. And so we also looked at their chart
Yep.
and I think price slightly below that.
But
It-
go ahead.
it-
I'm gonna let Lou take the mic.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
I love when Lou takes the mic.
I don't.
I'm
Give
not
Lou a
loving it. I'll be
calculator, he'll
honest.
play for hours.
Lou's got his calculator out. I don't do this kind of
Calculator
calculation.
doesn't look like mine. He's got like sines and
So, yeah,
cosines and.
that's it, yeah, so I like use just round numbers because that's all I can handle. The budget for the school is $15 million.
Yes,
And so if we divide that by the 735 students, we get 21,000, call it $20,000 a year per student for the
Okay.
735 students. Just that's throwing everything into the pot. But the problem with that is that that's really not what it costs per student. Because let's just say we estimate $735, 735 students coming in next week. But 736 kids show up. The budget's not going to change a dollar. Because so much of the budget's fixed cost. Just what little I've been able to catch on to here. This outside tuition seems to me to be a win for both communities. Because they're getting an education for less money than they could otherwise if they had to build a school. And the $12,600 that we're charging them, there are some costs associated with that one student showing up, books, supplies, that might account for what, $500 a year that you're going to spend on that student showing up and giving the supplies that they would get. The rest of it is contribution to the town of North Stonington to pay for the schools. So I'm not saying the 12 number is correct. I'm just saying there's an incentive for us not to charge that per student cost of $20,000 to the other towns, because if we raise it to the point where they say we're going someplace else, we lose, because that revenue will go away
But there's also.
and our costs.
And they still have to,
And our costs-
provide their own transportation.
But there's also, there's infrastructure associated with the ability to accommodate the tuition students that the taxpayers of this town is funding, that the people paying tuition are not fully
No,
recognizing.
no, they're not.
Yeah. So
They're not-
hear me
they're
out, Lou, and we could take this offline.
Yeah, sure.
But
Okay.
if we didn't have 28 tuition paying students, would Stephanie and her board reconcile the staffing to accommodate 28 less tuition paying students in the system? They should, because we should be staffed based on what the town's needs are.
Except if this were the classroom.
Yep.
And those are the seats. And now 12 of these kids don't come in. 90% of the cost still there. And you just lost all of that revenue to help cover the cost.
But I kind of like to see that exercise, because the last 3 years, we have increased the staff of the school system every year.
That's a yeah.
And I don't think that pressure would be there with this. So
Okay.
sorry,
That's
Stephanie, we're
different.
going down we're
It's
going
okay.
down a rabbit hole, and I don't mean to drag you through it, but
I would say maybe their staff has been increased, but I wouldn't call it teachers have been increased. You're talking paraprofessionals, specialists because we have a changed environment.
Fully burdened employees, fully burdened. These are not, these are employees. I don't care whether they're administrative or paraprofessionals, but they are fully burdened employees with benefits.
Why not?
If somebody,
Hold on, Winona wants to chime in and
Thanks. I feel like if we're looking for details, I think we should put the onus on ourselves in this board to lay out a spreadsheet of what exactly we want to see and have the new business manager at the school work with Stephanie and her team to get us some of those answers. So I know that we've asked these questions, but Lou, to your point, if we want to know fixed cost per students versus, you know, what the books are, what the transportation costs are, to try to really get down to the nitty gritty of what each student costs. And to Gary's point, if we lost all 28, what does that look like? I think we need to lay it out specifically. And instead of asking for data, ask for the actual information.
And to Lou's credit, I think he started asking for this last year, and I think we just couldn't give him an answer. So I found the chart. If you want, I have to have it back as my notes. It's my chart, but there's the chart, the tuition chart.
having done this before, I can tell you that when you start looking at the numbers, the way school budgets are built, this isn't a criticism, it's just the nature of the business. The fixed costs are we're going to make up 90% of the budget, and the only way you would lower the fixed costs is if there was a significant decrease in the number of our students, North Stonington kids going to school.
Well, so
Because it's looking at it like a step cost. 40 kids disappear, they go to another community, then you can eliminate three grades in the elementary school. You don't need 3 first grades anymore, you need 2. So that cost would go down. But absent that, you're looking at the fixed costs being pretty much stable. And that's why it's incredibly important to understand capital budgets, because it's those things that create the fixed costs.
yeah, because we have the facilities. The power is the power. You have the lights on for a certain amount of time. You have to heat it, you have to cool it, you have to do
Yep.
all those things. Honestly, besides outside of the brick and, as Gary would say, the brick and mortar, that is your largest fixed cost. And the next one would be your salaries, which we've always discussed during the budget season. 95% of their budget, probably even more, is fixed
Right.
price, which is a large amount is the buildings and staff.
Right.
So
So if you remember at the tri-board meeting, I had asked that the town and the Board of Education start to think about if there was a significant loss of revenue, how would we adapt to that? Because it certainly can't just get pushed on the rate base. And so it's sort of part and parcel of what I'm asking now.
Right, except revenue doesn't have anything to do with cost. Unfortunately,
No, but if the revenue goes down and you want to keep it flat to the taxpayers, how could you accommodate that? That's the question. What are we allowed to do by contract?
Yeah. right.
well, by state statute, we can't, their budget is the hardest one to war game for, because you can't go below the previous year. That's probably the most difficult thing.
There
Yeah,
are
no,
carve outs in that statute if we were
there
to
is,
lose a
but-
significant amount of enrollment.
And you really have to hit a large amount of those benchmarks for those things to get triggered. You have to have a complete and utter anarchy, like collapse of the town for them to get into that. It's a very, very tough benchmark to meet. So their budget would be one of the last budgets that probably would end up getting cut. They would probably, if they had a large amount of students leave, they would naturally have to reduce staff. You just can't have teachers sitting around doing whatever. But that's.
All right, we're into an hour.
Can I ask you one clarifying question? real
I mean, this, go ahead. Go ahead, Winona.
So the 735, does that include the 28
Yes,
It's
And-
inclusive.
and the 32 that are going out of district? Does that come off the 735? Or
I
is
would
that,
think that it does come off of the 725 because they're not in our school. They're not accounted for in our school next
seven
Thursday.
35 minus 32 plus, and the 28 is already in there?
Not minus the 32, that she's not including the 32 out of,
And I can double
district
check on that
schools.
for you, Winona, but I asked for enrollment numbers, which, Carl, you're absolutely right. There's still expenses that we are incurring. But I think when I said enrollment, they're really talking about bodies in the building.
Okay, so that would be 735, and so the 32 are extra, they're not counted anywhere.
right.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's 32, 9, 3, and 20.
But Winona, I'll get some clarity on that for you.
Could-
Do you have a capital expenses and planning spiel to talk about?
Really quickly, and this is not an action item for any of you.
No, we're
I
happy
read
to,
your-
this is, it's on the agenda. We're happy to
Well,
hear what you
I
want to
didn't,
say.
I didn't come here for it for action. I just sort of want to say, hey, this is something that we're butting up against, and I want you guys to be thinking about it in case there's clarity that sort of hits you. So I've been reading your draft manual that capital, I don't remember what the group is called, but that group. I'm preparing to put our capital list together to go to Bob in October. And so as I look at our capital list and I look at last year's, and I remember that it felt a little embarrassing to ask for some of that stuff. And so as we're sort of gearing up to say, like, what is it that we really need that's capital? We're struggling, I think, about defining, we can define capital because that definition is easy, right? We have it. The question is, what is the capital that we go to the Board of Selectmen with? And what is the capital that we're paying for out of non-lapsing? So for example, interactive whiteboards, right? Those smart boards in the classroom. We were able to really quickly identify that that's not something we go to the Board of Selectmen for. That's us, right? Easy. So that's non-lapsing. And if you look at that non-lapsing report I gave you, I could call your attention to some items on the first page. Winona, you have this in your email from today, I think. I apologize. You don't have one right in front of you to look at. But if you all look at that underneath fiscal year 22-23 on the first page, lines 24 to 27. So that's some work that we did on the baseball field that year. It's capital. It meets the sort of the financial and the length of time definitions. And it's facilities based, and it came out of non-lapsing. Is that something that you all see as something that we should be putting on a different list? How does that sit for you?
So this, you're gonna have to work this out with the Board of Select.
For sure, we're gonna have to.
Personally, I was gonna actually call out those 4 lines, but I didn't think we'd get into this level of detail, but that should be one line item with a 1 number, because in the capital world, this would be considered fragmentation. We cut a bunch of POs to facilitate a project.
I think we do it because we do it by invoice. These checks are all cut differently.
Yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
Which one are we talking about?
24 through 27 on page 1.
Okay.
12-foot high backstop, 12-foot, 72 by 8-foot fence to dugouts, install posts near dugout.
Yep.
I went through while you were having other conversations and just put C's and E's and M's, maintenance, expense, or capital on most of those. And I had all 4 of those as capital, but you're in a different region because you have this non-lapsing account,
Right.
which is taxpayer money that you're using to pay for things you need, expense, maintenance, and capital. So you're gonna have to work that out with the selectmen. But as far as a definition of the item, I would say it was a capital.
So that's the easy part. The definition is really
Yeah.
easy to figure out. It just is where it goes. And for sure, we're going to have to work with the selectmen around what happens and where it goes. But I think that it's helpful if we're all sort of starting to talk, since ultimately you're going to have to approve that capital budget, that we're all speaking the same language. So I have a real time example. So we made a gravel lot. Mike, if you remember that during the school building project, we got rid of some of that parking and we didn't have enough parking. And then people were parking in the grass where the lot used to be.
In the mud.
It flooded. it was frozen, then it melted. It was a disaster. Cars were getting stuck. So we said, we really need to make that parking. Bob was able to mobilize the highway department to come in, scrape it, bring millings in, level it all out, and actually came in and lined it. And it became a temporary parking lot for us. And I think they did it in like 3 or 4 days' time. It was incredible, in time for like a school event. That parking lot is used all the time. It's absolutely necessary. And it's been so important to the way things function. It's taken people off the grass. It's a big deal. So now we think we know we want it forever. That was a temporary fix. It happened in the winter. We couldn't have paved it if we wanted to. What do? We need to pave it. So Bob got me a quote, $22,000 to pave that. And then the town is going to come in and line it for us. It's about $600 for them to do that. They're just going to do it. So that's something that is a parking lot, but it's one that we want. It's a new one. It's not one that exists. And so this is something, does this go, in your opinion? And again, you don't have to answer now. You could just think about it, or if you have an opinion, I'd love to hear it. Does this go to Bob's capital list? Am I making that request there? Am I just paying this out of the non-lapsing account? I think that we're talking about waiting for a steep grant and trying to squeeze it in there, but I wondered what your thoughts were.
I discuss it with Bob, but,
Oh, we do. We discuss it all the time.
and, you know, it's tough. It's tough to ask the town for $22,000 in capital when you got 204 uncommitted funds.
Absolutely.
So work it out with Bob, but you know, if it's a year where you feel you're gonna have a big expenditure against this and it's gotta go against capital, that's up to the Board of Selectmen as they develop their capital plan.
Do you all begin to see this as something? So I guess I bring this up as sort of an illustration of, as a group of boards, what do we want to see on that list? Do you want to see that? Because again, you're going to be approving my budget at the end of the year. Do you want to see stuff like this paid for out of non-lapsing, or do you see a better place for it? Whiteboards are fine. Technology's fine. That makes sense. Where does this go?
My opinion, I think it should be in your budget. I mean, it's a long-term capital asset. You're improving the grounds.
We wouldn't
It
put
should-
this in our budget because it's a one-time expense and it would increase our bottom line. So
See,
we don't-
And this is what you gotta realize. Once they put it in their budget and it gets allocated as a part of their line item and everything, it will never, that budget will always
It's
stay
there
artificially
forever.
inflated. So if they put the $22,000, that $22,000 is baked into their budget.
we
for the
try
next
never to
year.
have a one-time expense in our budget.
So I would-
One-time hits should not go in their budget.
I would say. it should
Okay,
go-
that's
it should
news to
go
me.
on
I
the-
Didn't realize that was the methodology,
It should go listed on the town's capital plan from the Board of Selectmen.
and it
and
shouldn't
then-
be on there.
And then, and then,
Yeah.
and then noted it's coming from the non-lapsing account. So
Or-
it's in the town's capital plan, but it's funded out of the non-lapsing account.
Or the town does it.
Right. But
The
you
town
just make
does
the
it itself.
notation on the capital
So
plan.
that it doesn't show up in the Board of Education budget at all. It shows that if it's in the town budget and the town does it,
Correct.
if they think, well, we don't want they won't let the lapsing account go below something because that's their prerogative now.
I mean,
No, we don't have a rule like that. And I don't anticipate making a
It-
rule like
It's like
that.
if they need new air conditioners on the roof.
Funny that you say that, Jan.
Thing is, if you put a 200,000, if they go in there and say in their budget, they put $200,000 in there, that
Mhm.
$200,000 increases their budget. At the end of the year, when the budget gets approved, that $200 is in there for you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah,
It goes up and it artificially inflates it. That's
So
why it's. very,
That's
very
one of the
tricky.
benefits that we've been able to use the non-lapsing account for, is if you look through this list, these are typically one-time purchases that never had to show up in our budget to make the budget not have numbers that it maybe shouldn't
Right.
have.
And to go based on their $18,000 that they came and only put into their non-lapsing account shows that they're paying their bills and their numbers are accurate because they don't have the leftover money at the end of the year. Am I correct on that one, Michael? So the closer to that number, they come out next year with $5,000. Well, they're doing really, really good at budgeting. And it's the years that they come back and it's like, yeah, well, you know what? We have $120,000.
And I think that those years are probably over because of the
Probably.
COVID overfunding. I think if we right now hit $120 $1,000 at the end of the year, we've done something really, really wrong.
You'd have to really look at that under a microscope saying, hey, is there an
You
accounting
shouldn't need
error?
a microscope to figure that out.
Yeah,
if we're that far off.
you'd be like looking at it really, really closely, but I
My,
think that-
my feeling on it, Stephanie, and not to cut you off, Dan, but you're right, you're right. Something like a parking lot. You guys have to, as a board, now that you're completely in charge of this non-lapsing account,
Well, we were always in charge of the expenditures.
have to decide, is that necessary for education? So that's question number one. Fundamentally, can you provide an education because of this thing, or is it necessary for education? Then you can have a conversation with the Board of Selectmen, with regard to what's going to be in their capital plan and where is that funded? So your first question is, can it come from your non-lapsing
I think it
account?
can. I think we can make the dotted line I mean, we've paid for paving out of our non-lapsing account before.
Hmm.
When we paved the lot behind the elementary school, we were included in the steep grant and then paid, I think, $35,000 or $40,000. It's on this list for that 20% cost. So we certainly would always put it through the lens of, can that even be paid for out of this account? And I think we can make a case for anything that we purchase for the school, why we would need that, and how it benefits educationally. And by the way, Bob has been a dream to work with, and he's the one that gives me the quotes. We talk about it all the time. I just think that when Bob and I are talking about this and our boards are talking about it, it's also helpful for you all to hear that these are the things that we're talking about and struggling with. Where should it appear? And while ultimately, you're right, Gary, Bob and his board need to make the call what that list looks like. It's helpful if we're all on the same page about what should be appearing on what list.
I
What do
think-
you think?
Is that
should
what
come out of
you
non-lapsing?
that's part of your charge, isn't it? With that committee of figuring out what should be capital and what should
Yes,
be
the
expense?
Definitions were in the presentations and it's all on the Board of Selectmen to develop the capital plan at this time of the year. So when they step off for budget creation, that's
done.
already baked.
Yeah,
You should be meeting
I-
with the school and
I
So
think-
we meet with them
right.
at the beginning.
I
of
think as a
October.
board, and hopefully I can speak for everybody here. You understand what we've decided to do with this capital budget and prioritizing and not kicking cans down the road. And therefore, it's going to be a stressor on all of the operational budgets. So whatever you can do, given the fact that you've got so much money in that account, we are going to appreciate you using that account for one-time expenditures that would otherwise go on the regular capital budget and cause even more stress. So
And that makes a ton of
from
sense.
that's our bent, I
Yeah,
would say.
that makes a ton of sense. The only time that looks concerning is that if my non-lapsing account starts to look at $10,000 a year deposits, eventually when I'm funding whiteboards, right, those interactive whiteboards, the smart boards, out of that non-lapsing account, if I've spent it on paving and roof repair that you'll see on there, or toilet issues from the first year, then that might make its way to my capital list for the selectmen. And I'm not sure that that's an appropriate space for it. I think there are some things that are gray. I think that truly looks like an expense that the Board of Education should be paying for out of their non-lapsing account or their budget, not necessarily where the fire trucks are being purchased out of.
So
No, of course. Yeah.
I got the MOU pulled up. The state statute says it's specifically used for educational purposes.
Right.
What is the definition of educational purposes? It's a
These
pretty
guys have to decide.
So
that.
that,
well, here's the thing. The state comes in there. I'm sure at some point they would come in and say, hey, what are you guys doing this for? And they could
we
say,
feel
hey,
confident that we can defend any purchase that we've made out of the non-lapsing. And if we couldn't, we wouldn't be making it.
okay.
The last thing I want to draw your attention to are things, and Gary, just what you just did really quickly is sort of what my highlights were. When I looked through here, I also identified repairs. And that's the other thing that the board is continuing to struggle with is, how do we budget and plan appropriately for repairs and maintenance, because those are, I think, two different things.
Correct.
Maintenance and repairs. And I think we should be doing maintenance, right? And we should be budgeting appropriately for that. But the repair part starts to get tricky, and everyone's feeling uncomfortable about, are we getting it right? And if we don't get it right and we have a thing, we don't want to have to come to you necessarily if you have a better plan. So again, I know that this will be a
It's not
conversation that's
it's not
forever.
lost on it. Bob put us on a hiatus for the summer.
Yeah.
Planning to kick the same group off to handle maintenance once the summer.
That's
is over.
great.
And I gotta tell you how little I'm looking forward to those conversations.
Well, I'm so glad you're on that
But the thing
committee.
is, scheduled maintenance should be a very easy, an elevator needs to be scheduled, certified 2 times a year, or the air conditioners need to be cleaned twice a year, or the heating, that should be a fixed amount. You have a contract, it's going to cost this much. That should be an easy thing to put in your budget. The greatest unknown is what's going to probably go into Bob's, which is the repairs to that's the bigger unknown, because that could be this much this year, or it could be this much the next.
So
But that's
it-
as scary for
it
them as it
really
is
needs
for
to
us.
Be defined under the
Yeah.
real estate agreement. Is it a triple net lease? Is it a grossed up lease?
What-
But what is the structure? The asset's owned by the town. It's operated by the Board of Education.
Correct.
Is it triple net maintenance, utilities
But-
and expenses?
But in their budget, the budget that can't be reduced, it's an easier for them to handle the maintenance cost, because it's a better defined known that they're not going out on the ledge and swinging out saying, hey, I'm on the hook for all of this.
So, I would make the argument that the maintenance should be part of the town's budget. Because if there's a decision to be made, fix the roof or do the maintenance on the air conditioning unit, or buy educational supplies for the kids to use in the classroom, they're gonna spend the money over there. And maintenance always gets put off. I'm not gonna say deferred, because that's a different,
No, it's deferred.
it's ignored, right? Because someday we'll have to float a bond to fix everything. And this is just my opinion, if the town owns the building, they should be responsible for its maintenance and repair.
Let's not step off prematurely. That'll be our first meeting discussion.
You're right. I'm getting all choked up.
So if you have interest in looking at that non-lapsing account through that lens, those are the things that we actually have purchased since the inception. Maybe something jumps out as a board that you say, wait a second, this is the way it should be happening. I think we would all love to hear that feedback. And that's all I have, except to say, I in no way want you to think that I came here today to talk about paving, saying, I don't want to pay for this, and Bob saying he won't, because that's not at all the case. We're happy to fund whatever it is that we need to fund, and we really are looking at this as a way, like, how do we work together in the most efficient way? So how are we each spending the money in the places that we're supposed to spend the money? So we're not going back and asking for money and we're planning appropriately. So Bob was aware that I was bringing this up just as a hypothetical. And my last hypothetical is, what if the parking lot was already paved and I needed it to be, so it's an existing parking lot and I needed it to be repaved? Where would that request be?
So in the past, that was a part of the permanent school
But we don't have that anymore.
building thing, which
Right.
you would think that, if I remember right, Nick had that always as a kind of like a line item in his budget.
Probably still in there. Probably, there's
No,
still
they-
probably a placekeeper for it.
So
I
if
think
it's
they
a
took
life
that out.
extension of an existing capital asset, it's capital.
Yeah.
Right, Lou?
Yes.
But it's capital mine or capital town?
That's between you and Bob.
That's between you and Bob.
If
That
you want
is-
to talk about
That's
somebody,
Gary's favorite phrase over the last 3 months. I've been counting.
I think that these conversations and we started them last year. We're part of the tri-board and establishing, what is the capital committee, what are the parameters, and going into what is maintenance and what have you. Having these conversations are positive, and we're going to
Yeah.
keep them going, and they should be ongoing. So,
Perfect.
um,
Well, thank you again for indulging me in these
Oh, we can-
conversations. I just wanted to make sure that we're communicating
yeah,
and speaking the same language. And again, I I am apologizing for any bad feelings about this non-lapsing thing. Had I thought that it was going to be met like that, I would have approached it differently.
Thank you, Steph. Hold on. There's still, want to make sure Gary's in here. You good?
Oh, you want to take these back?
Oh, I sure do.
Oh, this right here, this,
No, just
this,
these.
Got the evidence.
this one's
now.
out, this one's just sitting here like with all kinds of stuff in it.
I'll also send my deck on.
Okay. That was the enrollment projections chart. The next item is review Board of Finance policies. As you recall, in our July meeting, that was one of our summertime goals. I picked 2 out of the 4, the first 2. It's 8:20. We should look at them. So the first one, I sent them out to you by email today. Everyone get those?
Mm-mm. Nope. Nope.
It doesn't?
Last thing I got was from Winona.
It should have been from my
Nope.
my work email.
Nope.
No, and I don't see that we received an email from Stephanie either, or I didn't.
What hold on a second.
No, I got meeting minutes and tri-board meeting minutes. That's all I got. Yep. I think the only other policy that we have actually a kind of a firm date on is the undesignated fund account where we revisit the percentage, the cap percentage.
There's got to be an email in my office that's ready to be sent to you guys.
Probably it's sitting there
sitting
and just sitting there.
No, I know I drafted it. I just didn't.
So Dan, your 2% cap, since state's gonna take it over, they can change it anytime they want now, can't they?
I don't think they can.
If it's a state,
They have to follow the state statute, which doesn't.
right,
sound-
but if the Board of Education or the Board of Connecticut Education goes to them and says, well, 2% is not enough, we want to increase it to 3.
Yeah, they can.
We'll
yeah,
have
as
to
long
eat
as, they- as long as they follow the state statute and they update the state statute. That's
So
what they
we're
gotta do.
stuck with what the state comes up with.
Correct. All,
Yeah,
all they ended up doing.
all that the limits there are statutory.
Yeah.
Operating that same
All,
statute.
all
that
they
was
did
one of
was
the
take
questions.
out that last one where they basically stated that we can't take it away from them. That's all they did.
But it also says allowed.
Allow, which they already have.
Right, to you, say they raise it to 3, then we could.
We can't take it back.
We can't take it
take
back.
But I'm guessing as a board, we could object to that
It's a
3% being up there.
it's a paper tiger. It has no teeth to it. Because we could say we don't want it. We don't want it. We don't want you to go to 10. If the state's got to let them go to 10, it
That-
is what it is.
The thing is that, and I want this to be clear, and I tried to. The statute says that the money for that account comes from us back to that account.
Mhm.
It needs to be, yeah.
It doesn't stay in their account at the end of the year and go directly in. I think our MOA allows them to just keep it. So one aspect of this thing and that statute change is that we don't have control over that money to say,
At
we're
all.
not giving you the
money back.
2% or if it goes up to 3%, they could just keep it. If it's available, they can keep up to 2%
Mhm.
before it even comes back to the town.
Yep.
No takesy backs.
Now, the only time we get money back from them is if they have an overage of over the 2%, and then it comes back to the town.
Correct.
But as long as they stay underneath their cap and everything, they have it. The checks and balances was always, hey, you guys are going off and buying a fleet of tractors and you don't need to buy a fleet of tractors. Hey, you guys are abusing it. We're gonna cut our losses and we're gonna take it back. They basically said, no, you can't do that. Am I correct on that one?
What, I'm sorry, say that again?
If they were which say they were buying a fleet of tractors or whatnot, and we said, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. We're gonna give you 60 days notice and we're taking that account back.
Right.
They took that away from us. The checks and balances.
Well,
Change it.
that's the one thing that we have to, really have to look at is like, did it take the ability for us to get rid of this risk and account and then next fiscal year, they can keep up to 2%?
Oh, and do
Start
the,
over again?
Start over again?
inst-
You know, the legislature doesn't always necessarily dot their i's properly and, you know, we could possibly get around it if,
start
you
another
know,
one.
we never, and probably not, because we never were able to really say, you can't keep accumulating the 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%. We could just say, you're done with this account. You were never gonna be able to take the money back.
Yeah. I agree.
So I still think we probably would not be able to take the money back, and our teeth are gone.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion, but.
Because we always had that
Yeah.
check where they're like, hey, you guys, you shouldn't be doing this, which we never really got to that. We never got, we always questioned it. We never got to the point where like, hey, we're putting you guys on notice. We never got to that point.
Well, the check becomes anything that's discretionary is not, you're not getting it in your budget. So that's check still there. That's so. So I don't necessarily want to go over these policies without you guys didn't get them, because it was, the appropriation request, the only thing that I really was concerned about that, there's a form that goes out. We've seen it come back from everybody on, when we do the appropriation transfers and whatnot, it's a special form. It says in our policy that the form is attached on the website. It's not attached. I'm going to try to change that with the IT guy. And it says it's available on downloadable forms, but Board of Finance. I tried to do that and there's no downloadable forms. So there's downloadable forms for the Board of Selectmen and for the Board of Education. There's nothing for us that has that particular form on it. I think Bob just sends it out, whenever there's a situation that arises. But it's not there for departments to use. Other than that, I have this one appropriations request. There's nothing else really that I feel is necessary for a change, but.
So just as you were talking about, if we do an appropriation for the Board of Ed because they need something and it's underspent, does that now de facto go to the non-lapsing account?
No,
Because they have to come to us with a,
no, because if they don't have enough money to cover their budget,
Right.
whatever they're doing with mixing and matching in their own way, then obviously they don't have enough money to put into a risk
yeah,
account.
because
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
So
because
it sort of says, okay, there'll be nothing going in non-lapsing.
There's been nothing going in non-lapsing.
So what you gotta also realize is the Board of Ed can move money amongst line items however they want. The Board of Selectmen cannot
Cannot
do
do
that.
that.
So that is when the Board of Ed ever comes, I think they've, in the going on 6 years, I don't think they've ever come to us unless it was maybe it was, the playground. They asked for a small appropriation or something like that. I can't.
That might be-
It might have been that, but they have to basically exhaust all of their monies moving around amongst their line items before they come to us. Bob can't move anything from this line to this line item because
Without this being
without that
implemented.
being done.
It's gotta be signed off by us
Yeah.
on that form, but the form's not in the policy on our website and you can't have access to it either. So that's the only change I have for that. The other one was, the balanced budget and reconciliation policy. And I'm just gonna table that to the next time. We'll have three, but it should be pretty quick. One of them is this, wasn't this a member of understanding as one of them?
Yeah, I think it was.
No, it was a policy on the undesignated fund.
The
So that's gonna be like, that's gonna be quick.
So the undesignated fund is probably the only one that has any, we need to make sure that the town bills where we are with the top part of our undesignated fund and the low end of the undesignated fund. The low end part of the undesignated fund is 8.5%. We just have to make sure that
That's
the
the floor.
that's the floor. We just have to make sure the floor is still good. We're not now on the second floor. We just have to make sure that the 2 months or the 8%, 8.5% will cover 2 months of bills. Because obviously inflation, everything else happens, everything. We haven't modified that floor since we put that policy in place. So it's been a couple of years.
Good point.
We've had increases and everything. Do we want to move it to 9 or, have the floor now at 10 and then bump up the high end to 20 or keep it at is?
I don't want to bump the high end right now because I mean, our budget fixing the shortfall is already.
Correct.
Is cooked into that.
But we just have to make sure that our bottom,
Yeah. Is that
Dollar is
enough
covered.
to cover 2 months of expenditures?
yeah. So that I think that's where we have to just
That's
look at.
Lou. I mean, you need to do that, Lou. So it's math.
Yeah. And math is hard.
Math is not hard.
Well, I know you can help with that too.
Uh-huh.
All right, so this is the second B is tabled. If you have a chance to look at that first one, and if you have any issues, we can talk about that one again too, but
I
don't.
think the language is on both of them were when we originally developed them and everything and went through them like 4 or 5 years ago, they were good back then.
Yeah,
We kind of went through, we spent like 6 months going through every single one of them.
yeah,
Yeah. That was painful.
I know, but we want to review them.
Yep.
That's our summertime plan, so that's what we should do. Oh, Troy had sent me the July report this morning. I didn't see that. Sorry, guys. So we have meeting minutes from the July 3rd, 2024. I'm on to agenda item number 5. That was kind of a combined effort with Carl and Winona. Thank you.
You could
So-
actually read those notes?
I could. And not related to those minutes, but related to those minutes, I just saw a post on Facebook that the new ambulance has arrived.
Okay. Yeah, I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Dan, were
401.
you at the meeting?
What's that?
I don't know if Dan was at that meeting.
Yeah, he abstained.
Okay, sorry.
Abstain.
Sorry.
All right, then we have 3 that Amy had sent. I printed all this stuff out. It's sitting in my freaking desk. Along with my agenda, along with the email that was supposed to go to you guys. No doubt.
Right, Gary?
All right, we have,
Saturday.
So May 1st, what was the other? Amy sent them out.
Yeah.
Long time ago. It was a long time.
Is this the tri-board
Are
meeting?
you
one?
not getting the emails?
No, I get the emails.
Okay.
I do get
Oh.
emails.
Oh,
Oh, Oh, okay. All right.
Oh.
What's the,
5-1.
Amy, 5-1, what's the order?
Oh wow, there's a lot of them. All right, so
There's,
I have 3 of them.
I have 3.
424. 5.
5-1 and 5-22.
Yep.
All right, let's go 4-24.
Make a motion to accept minutes as written.
Let me just see, I was there, Dan was there, Carl, Gary, Lou, Amy and Winona.
Second. Just need to make sure I was there. Before Winona catches me again. You got me.
That's when we went into an executive session.
Correct.
Dan moved for that and Gary, seconded. Oops. We did all the invoices and transferred money. That's all well done, Aim.
Yeah, that was a detailed one.
Yeah.
Back when we were like here every week.
Yeah, we called for the town meeting with the budgets. Nice work. Did we have a second on that? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
This is for what? 424?
Yeah.
You got the motion in second, Amy, for this? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposition?
What's the next one?
5-0.
5-1.
5-1.
Make
I
a
make-
motion. Go ahead.
I make a motion to accept as written.
Second.
Everyone was there.
Yep.
Mary wasn't there. He was on the farm. Budget to town hearing, town meeting, and the town meeting. Minutes are approved. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay,
Uh,
4-1.
I don't vote, correct. I wasn't
No.
there.
No, were you there? Were you seated?
Wait, which one are we on? 5-1 still? Yes, I made the motion for 5-1, sorry.
Yeah, you were seated.
Yeah, sorry.
I think, no, why not? You were online and Amy was seated for Sarah.
Correct.
I mean, we've got to vote for it, 4-1, unless you want to vote for that. Okay. All right.
Everybody votes.
All right, 4-22.
Make a motion to accept.
I'm
minutes
sorry,
for-
5-22.
Make a motion to accept minutes for 5/22 as written.
That one I was not at.
No.
Goes over the referendum results.
Yep.
Suspense list. Remember that, no rate discussion, we set it at 28.88 mils, 6 is that. All right. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 5-0.
Right.
Amy, do you have any other? I didn't see any
Yeah.
other than that. I think
Why-
so. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So the only other ones we have is July 3rd and the tri-board.
Yes, we did, we already did July 3rd. The tri-board is, doesn't, we don't have to
We don't have to
approve
vote.
those. We sent those to the
This
tri-board.
is information.
Just to, the last meeting that we just confirmed was 5/22.
Yes.
Sweet.
No, May 5/22. I thought
No.
it, Dan
I-
seconded.
Yeah.
Dan motioned and Gary seconded.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. Um. Amy, can we just, if you're online, if you can talk to Antoinette and see if there's, now that these are gonna be submitted, are we missing any meetings? No, you haven't missed three. You've missed one meeting, I thought.
The July one, July
You
3rd.
missed July because that's,
We didn't,
Carl did it.
and we didn't have anything at the end of July. We
We
didn't have anything at
didn't,
the
no,
beginning of August.
we've canceled two meetings between that.
And we're bi-weekly, but so yeah, I think we're caught up.
So I just missed the tri-board.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do we have a meeting at the
Just
end of
we-
June?
When we submit our yearly schedule this year, there will be one meeting in July and one meeting in August.
And one meeting, no, I think we did September and October too.
Just such a, the way I got talked into running, is because I was told there was no meetings in June, July, August, September. And I said, well, I could do that.
You need to go talk to Brad about that one.
Well,
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, the attendance level for this group has been fantastic. So, and I've seen in my time here, people miss every single meeting for over a year. So if you miss a meeting or two, Lou, we're not gonna hold it against you, particularly if it's in summer.
I think it speaks to the makeup of the board. This is a really good.
It
board.
is.
A lot of balance of perspective. We
Yeah.
can have fun. We get to the point.
Right.
It's a good thing.
And respect each other.
Yep.
Public comments.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All right, motion to adjourn, and that is Gary, Dan. All those in favor? Aye. 8:40.
Mike's around.
Turn them off.
Thanks, see you later.